Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Good deal. Okay, hold on one second. Let me make sure. Okay, we're there. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you again, Chris, for giving us another talk. I am here with Chris Lintz to talk about preliminary comparison of Alibates Chert, procurement north and south of the Canadian River. This was a Southwestern Federation paper presented earlier this month. So take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate it. This talk I'm giving today relates to the occurrence of Alibates Chert in the Texas Panhandle. And the initial part of the paper will discuss how it's formed. And then for the first time in 45 years of trying, I was able to get actually the whole group of people listed here were able to do a one-day tour on private land of the quarry sites that are on the north side of the Canadian River. And so the latter half of the paper is going to be contrasting the kinds of things we were seeing on the private land versus what occurs at the Alibates National Monument on the south side of the Canadian River, which is open to the general public and most people think is characteristic of the Alibates quarrying formation. And frankly, we were startled at the kinds of materials that we saw there. So without further ado, we're going to go in and start looking at this material. So again, most of us know that Alibates is the colorful material that is widespread, particularly during Paleo-Indian times across the Central Plains. Some suggestions some people have argued that it extended as far west as California, but I'm fairly certain those are mimic colorful chert that people would prefer to attribute to Alibates, and it's not really the Alibates material itself. But most people that are archaeologists, almost flint knappers, and even a lot of collectors are in awe of the colorful banded white, blue, red are the dominant colors, but there's a wide variety of other colors that are represented by Alibates. So on December of 2022, as I indicated, several of us got the opportunity to visit with the new ranch owner to look over a small part of their property. And obviously, you can't make broad generalizations on one day's worth of reconnaissance. We've been invited to come back out and take further examinations in the future, but combining the observations we made with a few archaeologists that have had the opportunity to get on that ranch that wants to remain anonymous, that is Meeks Etchison, Alvin Lynn, Andy Burcham, as well as information contributed by Paul and Susanna Cates and Bob Wishoff and Britt Bousman. We have a startling comparison between the quarries on the two areas. This is a map of the Alibates member of, I say Alibates formation, it's actually the Alibates member of the Quartermaster formation in the Canadian River Valley, marked in green here. And Roger Bowers looked at 30 areas, some of which are denoted by the black dots here, and did petrographic studies of his sources, stratigraphic descriptions of profiles, and has done an amazing job doing a petrographic analysis of the Alibates. In most of the areas he visited, it's like the small brown dots in the upper right corner of this slide. Those are actually pieces of Alibates that chert that is about the size of a pencil eraser, and that's what we see over most of the area marked in green. He was able to identify only 2 of his 30 sampled areas that had 90 to 100% chertification of dolomite. The dolomite, I should say Alibates chert is a conversion of dolomite to chert through a replacement process. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But basically, the two areas that he has marked in red in the middle area are his locations of quality dolomite. I want to point out on the north side of the river, that is on the left side, the red dot on the left side, that is not where the current quarries are located. The quarries are on the private lands on the north side, or along Plum Creek, a little bit further to the north. Basically, the dolomite is a formation that formed 250 to 300 million years ago, Permian deposits. And it's a intertidal mud flat with rich salt and other materials on the edge of the ocean that we have. Typically, it occurs in two different layers, with an upper dolomite zone a little over half meter thick, separated by about 5 feet of shale to a lower member, and which is 2.5 meters thick. And one or both, or in many cases neither, can be chertified into the famous Alibates flint. The source of the silica is dissolved from overlying deposits, and in this stratigraphic profile, we think we really don't know the source of the silica, but it could be from dissolving sands in the Ogallala Formation that are then moved down by water processes to more impervious layers below. But we also have to consider that we have layers of volcanic ash from the Yellowstone explosion 600,000 years ago that might be contributing the silica that's in replacement. And should point out that it's the Alibates dolomite, agatized dolomite, that we call Alibates Chert. But above that is the Tecovas Formation, and it too consists of mudstone, shales, and sandstones. And Tecovas also has a chert deposit formed by a replacement process. It is possible, to my way of thinking, that that they are maybe occurring at the same time, and the silica is stopping it in different formations as it's dissolved and moved down through the deposits. Classic example of the Canadian River Valley here, and you can see the dual dolomite layers separated by silt in the larger one. In the far distance, you can see that we have that a lot of these deposits are deformed. The Texas Panhandle is rich in oil and gas formations. We have a lot of anticlines and synclines that are formed. The bedrock deposits are folded, and they are also deformed, stressed, and fractured. So when a lot of people talk about the wonders of Alibates flint and what a great flint knapping material it is, that's a pretty rare occurrence. In a lot of places you see severely fractured stone. This is the Plum Creek source on the north side of the river, and the fracture occurs in little pockets or zones due to the deformation of the deposits. Now, in other studies I've done, have yet to publish, unfortunately, but basically we have these are trade blanks that were found at Alibates Ruin 28, and they're kind of crude bifaces that are sometimes piled into caches. This particular site had 25 caches of these things ready to be traded out. But in looking at these things, what you notice is that there are cracks in here that have different colors of material going through here. Bowers in his petrographic study, says that the chertification occurs during more than one episode. And one of the characteristics of Alibates is that we also have pockets of quartz crystals and chalcedony forming in some of the fissures. But what I really want to point out is that here we have small cracks that are black, white, sometimes yellow, cutting through the stone. And from my impression is that these are minerals in the groundwater that have seeped into the cracks and have become embedded in the stone. So the different colors would probably represent different climatic events at different points in time in the process of the formation of the cherts. Okay, the Alibates National Monument, as I said, is on the south or the east side of the Canadian River, and we've recorded 732 quarry pits on the monument location. The total head of this one canyon is only 754 acres, with the actual quarries just around the lip of the canyon head, encompassing some 280 acres. Plum Creek, well, on the north side of the river, we have Alibates as boulders and bedrock deposits far more widespread than we see south of the river. The ones that are marked in orange here are areas, Apache Canyon, Big Canyon outcrops. These are bedrock deposits, and they're fairly extensive, and it's good quality flint, as good as can be in those areas. But we have no evidence of quarry pits associated with these areas. There is no doubt in my mind that the vast majority of the hunters and gatherers from Paleo-Indian forward were just maybe napping off flakes or just picking up gravels from these deposits and working them. But the quarrying activity is a very special kind of behavior that happened during the late prehistoric times associated with the Antelope Creek people. Notice that the Plum Creek quarries are not restricted to the head of one canyon, but along multiple canyons, as recorded by Meeks Etchison and others that have been able to survey the area. That whole area encompasses some area 14 times larger than what the National Monument has on the south side. It's also possible that there once was a continuous connection between of Alibates Chert connecting the south and north quarries, and that during the Pleistocene, when the Canadian River was flowing out, we've removed a series of cherts from the middle of the deposits, and these have been washed downstream across Oklahoma to far eastern Oklahoma. The Pleistocene terraces in western Oklahoma, you find large boulders of Alibates naturally occurring that have been displaced from the river channels during the floods of the melting glaciers in New Mexico. And we get pebbles up to 6 centimeters in the Three Forks locale in far eastern Oklahoma that are being exploited as natural gravels by the Caddo Indians in that area. So it's not just the quarries material, but there's a lot of stuff going downstream from geological processes. So if we look at the boulders at the National Monument on the south side of the river, we see we've got a few outcrops of big boulders. And the gentleman standing on the rock is Paul Cates lecturing visitors that are visiting the quarry. What he's pointing out is that within the boulders, these occasional boulders we have here, we see black algal mats that have formed in the original deposits and are preserved between the chertification process of the flint. In Plum Creek, however, we get massive boulders. And here, what we found were in some of our deposits, this may not even be representative, it's certainly not the biggest, but the one on the left is one of maybe a dozen or more boulders that are measuring 2 meters by 4, almost 5 meters by 3/4 of a meter in thickness, and it's 100% certified. In the places we visited during our one-day reconnaissance, I did not find dolomite deposits that were not converted over to chert. It's all certified material that you're seeing. The picture on the right represents a boulder that's sliding down towards a road, and it's as big as a truck. And that is 100% chert that's coming down the slope, readily available. The difference in size of boulders and the extent of it is truly spectacular between these two areas. Going back to the National Monument on the south side of the quarry, this is after we had a range fire. But quarries are typically shallow, relatively shallow depressions that are filled with fine sediments. And around the perimeter of these things are cones of flint knapping debris excavated from the individual pits. It's the basis of these unexcavated depressions that we've identified the 732 quarry pits around the rim of this one canyon head. Not very impressive rocks you're seeing here. Tools are very rare except for perhaps hammerstones. I'll show you some more in a moment here. When we go to Plum Creek on the north side, we're seeing two types of quarries going on here. On the left are circular open hole quarry pits that are going down from above into the to find unaltered chert. But we're also seeing that along bluff edges, there are large boulders of alibates that are outcropping just below surface. And the arrows of the vertical arrows that we're seeing here are horizontally stripped back quarry pits. They're digging trenches back from boulders into the sediment to expose unaltered chert. Chert that's on the surface tends to dry out. It is also exposed to ultraviolet light, which damages it. It is also susceptible to range fires, and during winter time, moisture that gets into those cracks freezes and it busts the material apart. So surface exposed Alibates chert is not nearly as good as chert that is freshly exposed. And that was the incentive for digging the quarries, is to get hydrated chert, that is, water has a higher content of water than the surface materials. The other thing that we saw along Plum Creek, and I've not seen anywhere else, are these boulders that were badly fractured. And what we are looking at is essentially cavities that have been chipped away. And they're not probably chipped with a hammerstone, but rather a person is taking a flake, inserting it into the cracks that we saw in the earlier slide, and people are just prying out flat tabular pieces of alibates that are suitable for making stone tools. In one case, we have a cavern that has actually been chipped all the way through the boulder. You can see light through the back end of that little tunnel. And so this is a kind of quarrying behavior I've not ever seen at the Alibates National Monument location. So the lower right, again, picture shows the fractured nature of the chert and how it'd be fairly simple to take a flake or a piece of wood and pry out tabular pieces for manufacturing. No doubt in my mind, this kind of quarrying behavior is probably conducted by nomadic people passing through the area. You don't have to have a lot of logistical support of people digging holes to obtain this kind of Alibates material for use. So again, well, it said 729, 732 quarry pits, but this is a map showing the location of the quarry pits around the rim of the one canyon. And the circle that's on the left picture, is 1 mile away, is where the Alibates ruin 28 is, that I mentioned earlier. Again, the one on the right shows you the kinds of what a quarry pit looks like when you don't have a range fire. Tall grass growing in the middle over the dust, and then shorter grass, and ultimately you just get a circle of discarded chert associated with some hammerstones and other materials. Plum Creek area is not like that. These are some of the quarry pits we're seeing. And these pits are chucky jam full of large Alibates chert nodules ready to be hauled off to other areas. Now, I was stunned to see this. I did not expect to see this kind of density of large chert nodules to occur, something I was unprepared for. I was told when I first came to the Panhandle in the 1970s that there was a chance that after World War II, when Amarillo was rebuilding, that construction workers and landscape people used to drive trucks up to the Alibates quarries on the south side of the river long before the Alibates National Monument was created in 1964, and that truckloads of Alibates were loaded up and hauled back in for landscaping purposes. I don't have a picture yet, although I was recently told after I gave this talk in Canyon that one of the people in attendance has a neighbor who has Alibates supporting the porch of their house. And I'll get a picture eventually of one of these structures, but I don't know that we can talk about the complete scarcity of these size boulders on the quarries on the south side of the river, strictly due to the landscaping activities on the area. But it's very clear that the quarries on the north side of the river on private land are in much better shape of preservation than the one that the National Monument is portraying as the common source of chert quarries. This is the same site that we took a drone view of the thing, and there is, on the upper left, there's one person depicted in blue, wearing a blue jacket. But the lower right one shows you the quarry pits that are denoted by the boulders without the yellow grass, to give you some idea of the density and the sizes of these quarry pits at this one location at our site one. Threw this picture in with the courtesy of Paul Cates. He is one of the few people that have excavated a quarry on the national monuments, south side of the river. And the report is still being developed. But what this picture shows is half of a quarry pit that's being excavated. The distant wall is the fill that's inside the pit. And what we're seeing here is a layer of dark flint underneath a dolomite layer with a quarry pit marked in blue. But Dr. Cates was able to identify a series of 3 work areas, stepping stones, that allow the people excavating the quarries to pass boulders up from one person to the next out of the pit, or enter and exit the pit without killing themselves in removing the material. Now, if we look at the profile of the pit, what you're seeing is initially rubble that is slid back into the hole after it. But then on top of that are windblown sediments. And it's possible that some of those are possibly from the Dust Bowl days that have filled it in. That's what, of course, what the taller grass is growing in. Again, I don't see the big boulders that we're seeing on the Plum Creek quarries represented at the national monuments at all. In going through the collection of Alibates Ruin 28, I ran across a series of things the Alibates Ruin 28 has something like 16 storage boxes of large oversized Alibates pieces that are the trade blanks that I showed you earlier, but they also contained chipped double bitted axes and things like this. But these are the ones I'm showing in the top row are shanked pieces of Alibates that might be digging implements. We've not conducted use wear studies to verify the kinds of damage that one would expect, but you can see perhaps some resharpening of these items. The one on the far upper right has got a little projection to it, and it, again, may be the kind of tool that is used to pry out nodules of fractured chert. The lower implements are things that I've postulated or could have been helpful to dig the quarries. Clearly, the hafted tibia digging sticks are probably not used to directly work the rock face, but rather to remove the sediment overburden to get you down to the bedrock to start the work. On the other hand, the deer and elk antler tines and perhaps the antler pick might have been used to help pry out material from the fractures in the bedrock. And clearly we think that the wooden digging stick of mesquite is probably a dominant material. Quite often around the quarries, we do see hammerstones that are used to bash up fragments and remove material. The actual occurrence of the final stages of formal tools found at the quarries is exceedingly rare. The kinds of artifacts that do occur near the quarries are represented by hammerstones, stone wedges, and these concave edged tools that might be used for resharpening the wooden pry bars that we think are probably used to remove the boulders from the pit quarries. And these are archaeological examples recovered by Paul Cates from the Quarry Pit that I had pictured earlier. So basically what we're talking about is a relatively low technology method of extracting flint from the quarries using rudimentary implements. This oil painting by Gustav Sundström is his characterization of it. I don't think it's very far from being realistic. Pry bars and flint knapping, although I think that a lot of the shaping occurred back at the village rather than at the quarry site itself. So here's some things we don't know about the northern quarries yet. I've only been out there one day, and I do need to go back. But what we do know is that there's a lot of quality Alibates chert that occurs away from the quarries, and the work at Plum Creek is where the quarrying activity is occurring. It would be nice to know how far Alibates chert forms east of the Plum Creek quarry areas and to the north of it. Hopefully we can answer some of those issues. The extent and distribution of the Plum Creek quarries themselves are not known. We have a few locations visited by Meeks Etchison and Andy Burcham, usually on very short cursory visits. It would be worthwhile to check out areas between quarry areas to see if it's continuous between these various areas. That would be very helpful to know. We are seeing some diversity in quarry pits as opposed to what is going on at the southern quarries. And I talked about the Pride spall extraction, slit trenches, and the open hole versus the prying quarries. There might be other kinds of ways of extracting quarries and the implications that go with them. The size and distribution density of quarry pits at various locations needs to be better documented, as is the method used to dig the pits. It's very clear to me, though, that when you get into excavating for the flint material, which I attribute to the Antelope Creek people because of the large village at Alibates Ruin 28, a mile away. We don't know, there are sites on the north side, but they have not been visited with the eye towards being logistically supporting communities for the people that are digging quarry pits. But quarry pit activities is a lot of work. You have to have people that house and feed those folks, meaning you need to have a resident population. Like I said, the vast majority of the sites we have near the quarries that predate Antelope Creek are temporary campsites and are not long-term sites like we are seeing with the Alibates sites at Alibates Ruin 28. So look forward to getting back out there and addressing more information about this. Fortunately, with the new landowner, we do have opportunities to come back in and learn for what he has, and he's anxious to learn about what our thoughts are about the culture too. So want to thank Arlo McKee from the Texas Historical Commission. Was one of our tour chauffeurs, and he was the drone pilot that finished the one picture. But we also want to acknowledge the contributions of 3 people that really have worked in studying Alibates early on. Roger Bauer's petrographic studies is still the very best. It was done in the 70s. And it's a geological study more than anything else, but it's an amazing document. Gerald Meeks Etchison just passed away last year, but Meeks worked tirelessly in the Texas Panhandle and had opportunities to record a number of the sites. Susanna Cates, Paul's late wife, helped him explore the quarries and map, identify and count the 729 to 32 quarry pits on the National Monument. And we owe a real big debt of gratitude to those 3 individuals. So with that, I want to thank you for your patience in listening to this presentation and hope you've learned something from the